Imagine leading global brands, launching ventures worldwide, and making critical decisions across cultures for decades.
Today, we dissect the global navigator, how sustained resilience and conscious decision-making are built in a world of constant change and immense cognitive loads. Welcome to Decisions That Count. I'm Dr. Shawn Watson.
And I'm Michelle O'Brien. And our guest, Arun Hozack, is a global force, a transformative leader in brand strategy and innovation. He led marketing efforts for iconic Red Bull projects and has built ventures across continents.
Today, we're going to explore the unique cognitive load of global leadership, how adapting to diverse cultures impacts decision-making, and the strategies Arun uses to prevent decision fatigue and burnout over a decade-long high-impact career. Get ready for insights on building profound resilience in an interconnected world.
Arun, welcome to Decisions That Count.
Thank you both. Hope you're well. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah. Full transparency, we work with Arun, so...
He's our boss, and we get to interview him today. Yeah. So are you ready for your 2025 performance review?
Okay, what decisions do we want you to make better? So, Arun, you have had a incredible career from South Africa to Japan. You've worked all over the world. You've led marketing efforts for Red Bull. You've navigated complexities with Juul Labs in APAC. And now you've taken on a startup with Shawn and myself. It's a lot. What's the biggest and often unseen cognitive challenge of operating effectively across so many diverse cultures and demanding ventures?
I mean, I think the answer to that is, and I don't know if I have it, but it's the ability to decode the social structure of wherever you're at. I think this is really important. So for myself, I mean, I grew up in South Africa, as most people are aware. I mean, an interesting and often turbulent political environment, but the beauty of the country is it's really multicultural. Lucky enough, I grew up in a family that was very, very liberal, and we were exposed to and encouraged to interact with cross-cultural, multicultural people continually. Multiculturalism always fascinated me as a kid because we were exposed to so much of it. I also think I was pretty adventurous, very, very young, and I couldn't sit still. And what I wanted to do was to leave and travel. And I've always been fascinated by other places, other people, other reasons and other things. So I think inherently I am a traveler. And I think inherently I do like to try and understand the triggers and the reasons and the history of why certain cultures or people operate the way that they do. For me, this just fascinates me. It's just how humans interact within a culture and then when cultures come together. So I think that's always been a driving force. As I say, I left South Africa very young, 18, and started traveling, just more for the experience and the opportunity to go and see beyond the horizon, I guess. And that's stayed with me till this day, ultimately. And I think from a career point of view, to a large degree, I got very lucky. I set up my own business really young. And I think when you're young, you're driven by a lot of passion and a lot of self-belief, which is usually bullshit, to be honest. You know nothing, but you think you know everything. But what we tried to do at that time, and it was the early 90s, was apartheid was falling in the country, in South Africa. And I always believed that any major cultural evolution or revolution generally tends to take place in a public space. So, I don't know, the beer halls in Germany, private members clubs in England, the golf courses, the country clubs. I mean, this is where ideas, people, concepts, kibbutzes, communes, and this is where ideas are shared, and this is where new inspirations come from and change can potentially happen. So what we did was in the early 90s is we opened up a series of bars, restaurants and nightclubs. And I never wanted to be a bar, restaurant or nightclub owner. But what I did want to do in 1994 was to create spaces as apartheid had fallen where we could create a safe space that was based on classism rather than racism. So what we became were these venues where this new emerging youth, as apartheid fell, was able to interact with one another under this concept of the free generation. And it was an amazing journey to see, how the country was going to form and how these different cultural groups that were separated previously by law effectively were now free to come and interact under this concept of, at this time, music, fun, youth. And it was really an interesting business to open at that time. And what we were doing then was purchasing a lot of Red Bull as an outlet, and I always loved what the brand did, and I ran a number of projects for them as a subcontractor through these venues that we owned. And by the end of the 90s, I thought, I'm running bars, restaurants and nightclubs. This is probably not going to set me up on a really good trajectory for the rest of my life. I better actually grow up and get a proper job. And it was at that time that I was very, very, very lucky to be able to land up working for Red Bull. And that was basically the start of my career that sent me on this journey to multiple countries with this absolutely fantastic brand. So I think multiculturalism always interested me. I started business that were based around it, and then I was brought into a global organization that operated obviously across the globe. And luckily enough, after a few years, I had this opportunity, and I don't know why they asked me to go over to Japan and see if I was interested to see if we could, at that time, try and fix the business, which was in a little bit of a problem. So that was the first big multicultural transition professionally that I was offered, and I'm forever grateful to the brand for offering me that opportunity.
And Japan, amazing market, like an amazing country. What were kind of the key learnings stepping into there about how, because they are different. There's no other country like Japan in the world. Tell us a little bit about your experience there.
I think you've got to, first of all, for Japan, again, this is just my personal experience, my personal views. I think a lot of international brands look at a country like Japan, and you look at it on paper, and it's whatever the population today is, I guess nearly 130 million with a GDP of X, that this should be quite easy because it's a pretty affluent market, it's very forward thinking, that this should be easy for us to break into as a global organization. And often what happens is brands go in thinking that they're going to be very successful, and they lay down plans to achieve X, and they're going to invest Y, and they get to Japan and very quickly that they see that they're going to invest the Y, but they're not going to achieve the X in terms of volume. And all of a sudden what it looks like is that brand in that market looks like a catastrophic failure, when actually it's bad planning and it's ignorance to a certain degree. You look at somewhere like Japan, this is a country that put itself in self-imposed exile. And Japan is one of those beautiful countries that is thousands of years old in terms of a culture. They have a system and a way and a process that is really unique, and it's still followed today. And that the social code, as I alluded back to, is quite difficult to decode. So I think, looking at somewhere like Japan, you've really got to understand what are the drivers, what are the triggers of the Japanese, and how do they operate. And in order for you to be successful in Japan, you need to respect and understand how they work and be willing to go along for the journey with the Japanese. And you need to earn the respect. And you need to prove yourself to them that what you're trying to do is add value rather than just take. And the Japanese will test you. And to succeed in Japan takes a lot of time and patience. And how many organizations are willing to do that? Not many.
It's fascinating to me because of all the brands too, and growing up in Canada, Red Bull's bigger, faster, higher, the intensity, it's a very American thing to do. To adapt that successfully, as you did, to Japan, to decode the society or the structure of it, but still get the brand messaging through, I think it's remarkable, like especially for Red Bull, whereas other things may be easier for different brands. But like the decision process, so I have two questions as a follow-up to that. One is decision-making for Japan to your team there, right? Because you were the boss there. How would you go about making a decision for marketing, trying to translate Red Bull into Japan? And two, how does that affect the decisions higher than you? So like the big bosses, you're kind of in the middle there to do this translation to the social code. How do you make decisions for something like that and successfully keep the brand vision alive?
So the success of Red Bull in Japan is all down to the Japanese and the Japanese team. One foreigner coming in is not the solution. One. This is really important. What I found personally, because as you probably know, Red Bull is an Austrian company, and the Germanic way of thinking and the Japanese way of thinking is quite similar. There's a lot of similarities. They're entrenched. In Austria and in Japan, a lot of the focus is around the preservation of yesterday. Like if you look at Austria as a country and you look at Japan, there's a lot of preservation about what happened in the past, the buildings, the old arts and crafts, the way that cooking is done. There really is. There's this inherent. They have a lot of nationalism for their countries and they protect that. What I found that was happening in Japan was it was a communication issue. There was just a misunderstanding between HQ and the Japanese, and to some degree things weren't going well, and there was a certain amount of communication that was lost in translation, for want of a better term. And I think ultimately I became a bridge, probably, where I was trying to understand what the Austrians were meaning, or HQ, and what they wanted out of Japan, and then the frustrations from the Japanese and why it wasn't working. And then the idea was to try and repurpose that message from HQ to the Japanese to get them to understand in a language that they could accept or in a way that they could accept, and vice versa. So I think if anything, I was probably a bridge of communication. So what we managed to do was to get some space. The other really interesting part about all of that was the owner, or the then owner of Red Bull, Dietrich Mateschitz. For him, it was a matter of honor. And he said that to me once. It's a matter of honor for us to succeed in Japan. And it's quite a statement from an owner. I mean, that's quite a heavy weight and a lot of pressure. But what he also meant by that is do what you need to do and to do it properly, because I'm willing to invest until we do succeed. Which was, it was an amazing, it was a gift and a curse in one sentence, I guess, at the end of the day. And then for us, what we needed to do was just to take the entire business. So what we needed to do is understand what is the DNA of the brand? What is the brand trying to do, and how does it want to communicate itself as a brand, as it does globally? How for us then to translate that in a way that makes sense, A, for the Japanese team, and B, for the Japanese market, and C, for us to do the right things the right way in order for us to start getting the traction that we need. We had the space and we had the investments and we had a little bit of time in which to do it. And it was only through the coming together and the focus of that Japanese team that we ever succeeded in Japan. No other reason. And I think often, brands look at leaders that turn markets around or have success, etc. And it's usually the person in the market that is the furthest away from HQ, when they understand the messaging and they're making the changes on the front line. If you can influence to that level, you have an opportunity, because it's not about a bunch of leaders or management sitting around a boardroom table. It's about the people you don't see and what they're doing and how they've bought into the vision, how they've bought into the mission, and how they continually execute against that. So it's when the person furthest away from HQ understands the vision and the mission and it's clear, you have a chance.
I suppose empowering them to make decisions.
Absolutely. Now, in Japan's quite interesting as well. Is the whole system of decision making that happens, and you've got to lean into that. You know, coming into a market, you know, whether it be Japan or anywhere else for that matter. I mean, it's really important that you come in and you listen, and you watch. And usually, in my experience in Japan, is, you know, a lot of people ask, do you speak Japanese, and can you speak Japanese properly? And I can't. I mean, survival Japanese, absolutely. But in somewhere like Japan, it's not about language. You know, you can read the room through body language, and things just happen differently. And getting to a decision, there's a certain system that it follows in order for that decision to take place. And it's not the way that it happens in the West. And that's why I think a lot of foreigners working in leadership positions in Japan get quite frustrated quite quickly, because they try and impose their way, their culture, onto another culture. And the Japanese will outweight you. They know they're going to be in that role longer than you're going to be in the market. And they will outweight you. Yeah. And it's really, really important that you can build this team around you that trust you, and you need to earn the trust, and you need to earn the respect, and you need to work harder, and you need to work longer. Yeah, because you have to show through intent. And if you're not doing that, you're not going to get the credibility. And if you don't get the credibility, you're not going to get the results.
I loved working with Japanese brands. So out of Singapore, when I was working at Adland, and worked with a bunch of Suntory brands for a while and some Japanese beauty brands. And I loved it, but I did often struggle with that kind of hierarchical decision making. And one of my absolute favourite clients, he's very, very senior at Suntory. We'd come in and we would do our presentation. And I think by kind of, you know, maybe the third or fourth time we'd met him, you know, we were working on various different brands, came in, did our presentation. And I think about 10 minutes in, he'd fallen asleep at the table.
Oh. Like actually, or was it like a
power
move?
Actually, okay. Like had fallen asleep. Had kind of sat back and kind of gone like that and fallen asleep at the table. And the other kind of Japanese clients in the room were like, just carry on, ignore the fact that he's fallen asleep, but they just carry on to finish your presentation, do you think? And then afterwards I was just horrified. I was like, oh my God, like it must have been so bad. Like how wasn't he engaged, or didn't think about it? And the clients had said to us, no, he trusts you. You've done such a good job to date on the work that has been done. As soon as you started, he was comfortable enough with to actually nap through it, because he's confident that you're doing a good job and you've got this.
Hilarious.
And I was like, and he'll make a decision based on the feedback that we give him from the presentation. I was like, okay. Huh. So that became my benchmark. So when working with the Japanese, it's like, was it good enough that they fell asleep?
No decision is made in a meeting in Japan.
No.
You know what I mean? That's the start of the conversation.
And that was the other thing, is you'd say, okay, you'd present, and then you get the feed, and then you'd email them to follow up, and then they'd say, thank you, the presentation was wonderful. And then you go, okay, have you got any feedback? We move on to the next stage. Then the next email would be, thank you, presentation was wonderful. And then you get to the next, and the third email would come, and it would be, the presentation was wonderful, thank you. But here's all the feedback. And so you'd end up, there would be that process of we can see the work's been done, thank you. But actually, no, it's rubbish, you need to start all over again. Here's the feedback in the most politest, nicest possible way.
Yeah, it's a fascinating place. Yeah. Amazing. Mm-hmm. Amazing.
But I think at times it was coming from the West and often being empowered, even being quite junior, of having a voice in an advertising agency and being able to, you know, help make some decisions. I think then going and working with kind of the Japanese culture and it being very hierarchical. And it's like, we know the marketing manager can't make the decision on this. Even the head of marketing, it would have to kind of go up. That things just took so much time when it came to getting a decision and then moving the decision onto action.
The question around the speed of decision making too. So obviously we'd love to talk about decision fatigue. Do you find that that hierarchical structure more resilient to decision fatigue because important decisions take longer? Because you worked in the United States too, right? Where it's move fast, break things, right? Like any decision is better than no decision, basically. So in the context of decision fatigue, do you see resilience in that structure, or is it stifle innovation? What are your thoughts on the speed of how it's made?
I think it depends on the organization, and I think a Western brand operating in Japan will be very different to a purely Japanese organization. Mm-hmm. And I can't speak for a purely Japanese organization because I never worked in one. Mm-hmm. I think the way that Red Bull did work, I think the speed of decisions was quite quick within the Japanese context. Okay. Just because we were at a place that we had to turn the business around and we were effectively running out of time. I mean, there was a time pressure. Mm-hmm. I think what's really important, or what I found, was, being able to set quantifiable and measurable, as in any organization, visions and missions and business plans and what needs to be achieved. For us, it was quite survival in the early days. I mean, if we didn't decide quickly, if we didn't get results quickly, there were going to be implications. And those could have been, we lose a listing in a store, we're not going to sell enough, so therefore you're going to get delisted, you're not going to have a business. For us to go out and get enough cans in the hands of consumers to engage with the product and to feel the functionality of the product. I think we were under a bit of pressure. We were forced to take and make decisions. I mean, both internally from an organization point of view in Japan, as well as from an HQ perspective as well. I think where the fatigue definitely sets in Japan and where it will obviously then impact decisions, I guess, from the individuals, is that the Japanese work very hard and they work very long. Now, one can question the productivity and working 14 hours a day consistently for God knows how many years. How productive are you going to be and how clearly can you think? I think that's a different discussion. So I think there's for us, when you look back at time, I think we made quite quick decisions because we needed to. It was a matter of survival.
Mm-hmm. Interesting on that workload, though.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, that unfortunately to some degree, and there's enough articles about it, I think this is the negative side of Japan. And I think things are being addressed now because it's being realized just in terms of how long people are expected to at least show up. Now, whether, and that's from morning to night to the drinking culture, being back the next day, and this just on a continual perpetual cycle. I mean, as a human being, I don't think anyone can operate at 100% working, 12 hours plus over multiple years. I mean, there's got to be an effect and there's got to be an impact. But I think that's been addressed to a degree. But it's also part of what and who Japan is. And that's the expectation. And that's how you show up. That's how you're expected to be. And that's how you rise through these ranks, ultimately.
And then you went from Japan to the US.
I did. Completely different.
Not just US, LA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think for anyone that's not from the US, and I mean, everyone's been exposed to US culture, obviously, throughout their lives through, TV, media, films, etc. When you get to the US, it's daunting. Yeah, I mean, it really is a beast. Just everything is on a whole different level. I come from somewhere like Japan, and I don't know, you have a team of nationally 90 people. I mean, you get to the US and it's 900 plus. You talk, your budgets in Japan are 1, your budgets in the US are 100. Just everything is just at scale. And it's incredibly daunting in terms of, how big it is, how big the teams are. And I think the way that the US, the Americans are schooled from a really young age is they schooled to put their best foot forward. They're schooled to present themselves and to really highlight who they are, what they can do. And this breeds this competition that's in the US, which is exactly the opposite to what Japan was. Japan is about the group. The US is about the individual. It's two completely different ways of operating. Yeah, the Japanese move as groups. So within each team, and it's all to do with what year you're born, how old you are, what level you are in an organization. Whereas in the US, as we're all aware, someone really young with a really good idea can take on the world. The thing that I found and I love about America is Americans really do wish success on those that want it, put in the effort, and go out and give it a try. I mean, as a nation, they stand behind that and they really, really push it. Whereas in most other, I guess, colonial countries, you have this poppy syndrome, you know. Everyone wants, you know, so long as a group of friends are doing quite well, that's great. We're all on the same level. But as soon as one rises above the rest of the group, they want to chop them down. And you know, this I found in Australia. I've seen this in South Africa. I've seen it in England. Whereas in the US, it's like, go for it. We got your back. You know, and I think this is a key driver behind the success of Americans, plus the scale, plus the market, plus the investment. So from a transition between Japan and the US was night and day, and it was very difficult, you know, to come in and this was just this behemoth. Just everything was just on steroids. But again, fascinating.
Decoding the social structure of the United States or the American, as big of a problem or trouble, or I guess Red Bull was already pretty established at that time.
Yeah, very established.
Yeah,
okay. Huge, massive. It was. I mean, effectively, it was like the Titanic.
Right.
To move anything, not that you want to go in and move anything, but I'm just saying it was a much slower ship to turn than what we had to do in Japan, where we had to be extremely nimble, and we could be, and it was a much smaller team, and the business was much smaller, and you know, we were fighting for survival. Whereas in the US, I mean, it gets to the point at that level where any of the big brands are pushing for dominance. It was two very, very, very different business states and conditions.
So Red Bull is very, very famous for all of its marketing. And I've from being in agency land, worked as kind of an agency partner on various different Red Bull projects. And I think what a lot of people maybe don't know is that the budgets aren't ever very big.
No.
And Red Bull do a lot with very little, and it's very scrappy. And as an agency, we had to kind of come up with ideas that were very low cost but very high impact. We really had to think outside the box, and the brand and the business were always pushing us to and I think pushing themselves internally, the marketing teams internally, to really do some very unique and very interesting activations. And that's, you know, we've seen that throughout the decades. You know, what's it like being a decision maker in that? I'm sure you had to lead business planning for various markets and see those ideas. Like, how did you decide what was the right marketing activations to go for? How did you, you know, support the teams in executing them?
What's a marketing activation?
So like a campaign execution.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Probably the best way of putting it.
Okay.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's a really loaded, and you could speak on that for years, you know. Look, I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of brands that try and replicate what Red Bull does, and they get it so wrong, and they don't know how to do it, and it never works, yeah? Because what they want is they want the output. They're not willing to give the input. Just bear with me for a second. So basically, ideas win, budgets help. Really is, I think, the overarching statement. What Red Bull always did is they're really credible. Right? Red Bull was never about trying to attach themselves to a scene in order for the brand to ride off the back of whatever that subcultural scene was, which is what most brands do. They want to slap a logo on something that already exists. There's no credibility whatsoever in that. And consumers can see through it. What Red Bull is amazing at is whatever they identify as a good fit for the brand, and most people will go straight to extreme sports or action sports, is they partner with those scenes and those people at a grassroots level. And what they bring is added value, in true added value. They're not interested in logos, really. They're not interested in just throwing money for the sake of it to get some sort of ownership. They'll come in and find and support by bringing physical requirements to grow that sport. Example, they'll go and cut a track in a mountain for a mountain biker. They will go and build ramps for a snowboarder. They will build the most amazing dance floor for a break dancer. Because what this does is it improves that subculture and their ability to do whatever they're doing. Because money's not going to do that. Yeah? They grow things from literally from the ground or the foundation up. And they do this in multiple subcultures for multiple years, in multiple markets with multiple people. And they in for the long haul, because these are the people that portray the attributes of the brand and can speak to it, and speak to it with credibility and fondness and love. Because without, in this case, Red Bull coming in and giving them the initial support, they wouldn't have grown at all as individuals or as a sport, as a collective. So this is really about long-term planning, foresight. This is about patience, and this is about touching multiple lives and multiple scenes across multiple countries for decades. This is why.
No, it's fascinating. I mean, something that
it's genius.
Yeah, and they're still private company.
And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's genius because it's authentic.
Which is weird to say, I suppose.
No, of course.
Yeah.
Which you know what I mean. And authenticity is
Everything.
It's everything.
I don't know if guys saw the news recently with Pepsi slapping on the probiotic. So now Pepsi is a probiotic, and they're just taking so much flack. Like, of course, just because you're right, it's the authenticity, just slapping on something just because it's popular, right? So I think you're bang on for, especially modern younger generations. They see through all that stuff so easy.
Sure, anyone, you know, and that's the beauty. And it was a very slow build. You know, it's taken 30 years, 40 years, or 30 plus years. Yeah. So the foundations are solid. The authenticity is there. The credibility between the brand and the person, the consumer, the athlete, however you want to define it. I mean, it's a very strong bond because it's a partnership. It's done correctly. It's done right, it's not rushed, it's not pushed, and both sides benefit equally over time.
And was that the decision to operate that way? Did that come down from Mateschitz himself?
Yeah, and obviously everyone else around him and the early teams, and he never lost that, ever.
As a leader and, you know, massive decision maker for this organisation, what was he like?
I mean, it's not like I know him. I mean, but we used to present him every single year. For me, he was personally super insightful, could see through bullshit really, really quickly, was very, very decisive, shared his opinion, and if he backed you, or he backed a project, or he backed a plan, he backed it all the way. And the expectation was that you delivered against his belief and trust in you. But again, I mean, this was just a few interactions over the years. But his impact was incredible and still felt now. I mean, he rewrote the marketing book. I mean, him and a lot of people close to him. And, what I loved about him was the people that helped him the most in the beginning. He was always loyal to them from that point on, because he realized without them, I wouldn't be where, or we wouldn't be where we are today. So this concept of loyalty, very principled, very supportive, was who he was as a person. And I think that comes through in the brand, you know?
I don't think Red Bull would, well, maybe not even be around, but if they went public, I think they would have lost a lot of that.
Yeah, but he would never go public.
No, I'm glad it never did. Yeah. Why would he? Well, yeah, a lot of people think that that's the end destination, I suppose. But
What, to be controlled by other people?
yeah, fair. Yeah.
So just to shift gears a little bit, you then went to work for Juul Labs.
I did.
And a bit controversial as a brand and product. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I think there's a lot where to start. I think amazing technology, amazing mission, like incredible.
I don't know their mission. What's their mission?
To basically transition the world's 1 billion smokers away from cigarettes. Right? Mm-hmm. And when you look at the founders of Juul, they were, again, this is my understanding of it, and I could be a bit wrong, and I apologize to anyone that I've got the story wrong, but they were basically in Stanford. They were two friends that smoked at Stanford. I think they were in some sort of industrial design course. And they used to smoke between breaks, and for their dissertation or for their final project, they decided that smoking is, for themselves, is not good, and what they want to do for their final project is develop an alternative to smoking. Mm-hmm. That's where it started. And ultimately, they started some of the world's, I think someone in China actually did something quite similar. Effectively, they started developing the first round of alternative nicotine products. Yeah? Their intention was to better themselves and to get themselves to stop doing what they were doing because they knew it was no good. So it was really founded on some credibility. And they went and developed it, and they developed the first product, which, funnily enough, was actually sold in Japan to Japanese tobacco. And then they went on, they developed Juul. Right? From a piece of technology, amazing. Like really, really, really smart. Like any new organization, when you start out, you are going to make mistakes. So just think about going into business. You're a brand new company. You've just formed. You're a startup, whatever it may be. If you look at that and take it into humans, where would you be in your life cycle? You'd be a teenager. Well, you've just started out. You know very little. You think you know everything. Juul went out and basically got some traction very quickly, more so than they thought. The product and the concept and the technology resonated. And they went out and basically, in the background, grew a new category that hadn't taken hold in the US. And they made some early mistakes around marketing, like any company is going to do. Huh? What then happened was they got a massive... they just grew a category that never existed. They just got a huge piece. And if you look at cigarettes, what was the percentage of Americans that smoke cigarettes? And I forget the number, but just for want of a number, let's call it 9% or 7%. 7% of adult Americans still smoke cigarettes. That number hadn't moved for decades post the 1990s whole tobacco debacle in the US. Juul came around, and that number dropped by 3 or 4%. Wow. Right? Like, the impact was significant. Mm-hmm. Right? And it caught the entire industry and the market by surprise. All of a sudden, there was this huge interest in vaping, new technology, and then all the shit started in America. And if anyone wants to know what that's all about, there's a documentary called Big Vape. Go and watch it. Gives you a great background to it. So what I really liked was the mission was amazing. The technology was interesting. The opportunity that they gave me in Asia was great. I'd done what I wanted to do at Red Bull. It had been 20 years. I felt like I needed a change. It was an interesting choice to make at the time, but it was a decision I took, and with any decision, you live with the consequences, good, bad, or indifferent. What was interesting when I joined Juul was basically at the heights. It really was at the crescendo of all the negativity that happened in America. It was at that week that when I joined. And what we needed to do was hire, I can't remember the number, 150 people in year one, and basically let 151 people go in year two, i.e. myself. Yeah? So there was this massive ramp up and this massive shutdown of the organization because of what was happening in the US. And this was because Big Tobacco got involved, the attorney generals from all over the US got involved in this debacle and vaping and what it meant, and anti-smoking groups and mothers, and I'm not here to judge any of it, but there was a lot of pressure put onto the category in the US. I take my hat off to Juul and to the new CEO and board that came in. What happened, unfortunately, was Juul was then held up as the negative poster child for the entire category, which in my opinion was pretty unfair to a large degree and unfounded. We were in Asia trying to build the Asian business. We had to wind it all back as they did with Europe because of what was going on with the FDA in the US, and Juul. What I read this week was there's something in America called a PMTA, which is a pre-market tobacco application, which is basically the FDA then said, we've had enough of this vaping. There's a lot of stuff coming in from China. There's a lot of these liquids. Kids are getting involved. There's all of these flavors, all well-founded. And they then said anyone that wants to operate in America needs to apply for something called this pre-market tobacco application, which is, God knows how many thousands of pages in terms of a submission to the FDA to prove that your case and your product does what it says it does and that it should be accepted for sale on the open market in the US. A lot of the big organizations were given a PMTA and Juul wasn't. Again, held as the negative poster child. Senior leadership in Juul have held out and fought this PMTA for the last 6 or 7 years, certainly since I left in Singapore. And apparently they were granted it this week. Right? And this is due to senior leadership that the person in question I really admired and respected, him and his immediate team, and their belief in the company, in the mission, and the fact that they were unjustly judged, which I, to a large degree, agree with when they went in front of this congressional hearing and all of the stuff that happened in the US. They've stayed the course. They made all the changes that they needed to way back in terms of taking flavors off, putting in age verification when you purchase. I mean, they really went beyond and above anyone else in the industry, and they were basically written off. And they've held and stayed the course, and apparently they got it this week. So for them and their senior managements, kudos to them and well done for the belief in the vision and the mission. And that to me is standing behind a decision. We are not going to just be taken out. We believe in who we are and what we do. We believe we're having a positive societal impact, and we are going to go and prove that. And it's taken them and whoever this many years to do it. So that learning for me there was amazing. I mean, there was multiple learnings, but talk about decision fatigue, taking and making the wrong decision at the right time or the right decision at the wrong time. That was definitely a super interesting period, not one that I'd want to repeat. But at least for the company and for the senior leadership, really, they're holding their heads high. And I feel really good for them under that situation. Now, the irony with all of this, and it's, as you say, is it contentious? And I've had a number of discussions with people, I don't know, around, Juul and tobacco. And I'm sitting at a bar and they're all drinking alcohol, having this discussion. And I just go, guys, the hypocrisy sometimes is just unbelievable, Or bankers saying, oh, thank God I never invested in them. And you're going, well, 2008, 2009 financial crisis. Guys, I mean, if you're in a glass house, don't throw stones, huh? Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah. Wild story, yeah.
I know. I look at you and look at the jobs that you've had and just think it's a lot, whether it's been, markets or just everything. You've got to have suffered from cognitive overload from it.
Oh, yeah.
Just tell us a little bit about how you've been able to manage that.
I don't know if I have. No, I mean, I think Look, as I said at the beginning, absolutely I'm an adventurer. I've always wanted to travel, and there's a lot of excitement in the unknown. The challenge when it starts coming to these international postings, it's senior leadership, which is, I think, where you're going. You've actually got to start breaking this down into various segments because, A, you're going to leave your country, wherever your home base is, temporarily, permanently, or whatever. That comes with so much decision-making and planning. Well, in my case, there's a family, so there's a wife and 2 children. You now need to move to a new country, which you think you know something about. Until the day that you get there, you know absolutely nothing. Now, in tow, you've got, in my case, a wife and 2 children. And now what you've got is you've got a business that's been amazing in terms of getting you over there, but they have some high expectations in terms of what we need you to deliver. So now you've got to break this down into terms of, right, I need to make decisions for the family. That's one. I need to then make decisions for the business. I then need to try and make some decisions for me in terms of how the hell do I work this all out and get my head around this. And then really importantly, you need to start making decisions with and in your team in order to deliver for the business. So the overload and the stress and the amount of decision-taking and decision-making is, on a lot of days, incomprehensible. It's very, very, very heavy. And the pressures run higher. They really, really do, because you're being pulled in multiple directions. Your family wants you to make them feel secure. HQ wants you to deliver because, in our case, in Japan, the business is not doing what it should. You got a Japanese team saying, well, who the hell are you? How are you going to sort this out? And you're sitting there going, well, what do I need to achieve in the business to try and appease these 2 camps and at the same time give enough time to the family at home so they don't feel like they're floating on an island in a new country where they're more confused than you are, because at least you've got an anchor in an organization. You know, that becomes to some degree a second home for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. So yeah, it's tough, huh? But it's super exciting. Huh? But not easy. And some days are great and other days aren't. But I mean, when you look back on it, it's a gift. You know, to be able to go and live in another organization, work with new people, hopefully be successful in terms of the requirements of the business. And what was really, really important to me, and this is actually going back to my youth now, was we grew up under apartheid in South Africa, and we alluded to that earlier. I never wanted my children to be affected or see or judge people on color, race, creed, or religion. You know, we grew up under a system that was very oppressive to a large degree, and what I wanted was them to be able to have a life of freedom from judgment. Now, judge a person on who they are, but don't judge a person on where they come from, if that makes sense. And I think one of the biggest success factors now out of this global journey is looking at the children, and there's pluses and minuses, but the kids really are, I guess, third culture kids to a degree, but they truly don't see color, race, and religion the way we were schooled. And for me to see that in my kids is a gift. And they had to learn how to work out new culture, society. You know, everything we're talking about here. Imagine being 7, 8 years old in these foreign countries, trying to work that out, new friends, new people, new languages. But I think what that's given them is a gift that very few kids will get. Mm-hmm. Now, the negative of that is that they haven't grown up in the same place for multiple years, and the roots and friendships that are 5, 10, 15 years old. I mean, there's also a negative side of it. But I think this is more beneficial, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So I think that's been the true gift out of all of this.
Aaron, it's been an incredible life. So far, it's not over.
A little doomsy.
No, I need to wrap this up. And so I was like, oh, right, we're out of time. Aaron, thank you so much for coming to talk to us.
Cool, that was great.
Yeah, we didn't even get into the next venture. And maybe we need to do a part 2 on...
Update podcast.
Yeah, on what we're all doing together. Because, you know, that's a new chapter and... very exciting.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. I think super insightful, especially the cultural nuances and decoding social code. I think that's what people don't think about enough.
Oh, it's really important. Yeah. People watch as much as you can for as long as you can.
Definitely.
Love it.
And then to all of our listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. As always, please tell us what you think, like, share, comment, and please, in the meantime, make every decision count. We will be back next week with another episode. See you soon. Bye.